Okay, let's dive into this, because today we are taking a miniature but honestly a really mighty tour of how our world is powering its future. We're looking at this incredibly detailed clean energy diorama, a brilliant physical model that captures the massive scale of renewable power in one stunning tabletop landscape. Just take a look at this magnificent creation. It's a complete visual landscape showcasing alternate sources of energy. Right at the top, you can see a bold sign pad setting the stage for the tour. And down at the very bottom edge, there's a grounding banner that spells out the ultimate goal: clean energy, green future. It's just a fantastic, tactile way to see how all these different renewable technologies can coexist side by side in a single ecosystem.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the green future model itself, then hit harvesting the wind, solar-powered living, harnessing hydro energy, and the biogas plant before wrapping up with the overarching benefits of clean energy.
To really get a feel for this setup, we're going to traverse the model's miniature landscape methodically. We'll start over on the lush, grassy left side of the diorama with wind and solar energy. Then, we'll make our way right across the terrain toward that elevated rocky landscape on the right, exploring hydro and biogas energy along the way.
Section 2. Harvesting the wind, power from the air. So let's make our first stop on the far left side of the diorama.
Wind energy is, simply put, power obtained by harnessing the energy of the wind. Now, before we look closer, just think about the sheer scale of wind power in the real world. Capturing kinetic energy from the air usually requires massive, sprawling farms, right? But this model manages to capture that imposing presence beautifully in miniature.
Notice how the creator brings this concept to life here. We've got this tall, white, three-bladed turbine towering right over the landscape. And look closely at the mast and the center hub. You can see these active blue and purple LED indicators glowing. These lights brilliantly simulate active generation, giving a really dynamic sense of motion to what is otherwise a static model.
And check out the base of that turbine. It's planted firmly in this vibrant, grassy landscape, completely dotted with miniature trees. But the absolutely crucial detail here? Those visible red and black wires trailing away from the tower base. This micro detail of physical wiring perfectly represents the macro concept of how actual wind farms feed the electricity they generate directly into a centralized power grid to keep our cities running.
Moving on to Section 3. Solar-powered living, energy from the sun. Let's shift our attention slightly to the right, checking out the charming residential setup nestled right next to our wind turbine. Solar energy, of course, is radiant light and heat from the sun, harnessed using solar panels. We all know how they work, but what's really impressive here is how this setup showcases its localized application. You'll notice the dominant visual feature of this miniature house isn't its walls or its yard, it's the roof. The entire top of the structure is completely covered by distinctively dark blue panels. The creator even carefully detailed the grid lines to wonderfully represent the individual photovoltaic cells that make up a real-world solar array.
And this brilliantly illustrates the immediate, local application of residential solar power. See how the interior of the little house glows brightly with this warm yellow light pouring out from the windows? It's a fantastic visual cue. It shows us that the energy harvested right there on the roof is directly powering the lives of the people inside. It takes this massive concept of energy independence and brings it right down to the local neighborhood level.
Let's jump to Section 4, Harnessing Hydro Energy, the Power of Water. Now we're going to make a major spatial shift across the board, moving our eyes to the elevated, rocky terrain that dominates the back right quadrant of the model. Hydro energy is power generated by the flow of cascading or falling water. To really grasp this massive mountain structure, you have to think about gravity. Hydropower relies on the sheer force of cascading water to generate immense electricity, and well, the model translates that raw power into a true visual centerpiece. The diorama captures this industrial scale beautifully. We're looking at an imposing, large, gray dam structure built right into the middle of the hill. You can clearly make out the distinct architectural details of the vertical sluice gates holding the water back. What's especially striking is how this concrete-like structure is built directly into a rugged, dark, rocky mountain. It's expertly simulated with heavily textured materials to show exactly how real dams must be anchored securely into the surrounding natural geology. From that upper reservoir, you can see simulated blue water cascading aggressively through the dam, spilling out into a lower river system. This steep visual plunge perfectly represents the massive civil engineering required to capture kinetic energy, mirroring the exact path that spins those hidden subterranean turbines in real life.
Next up, Section 5, the biogas plant, turning waste to energy. We're now heading over to our final energy station on this tour, situated prominently on that distinct brown soil base at the very front right of the landscape.
Biogas energy is a renewable fuel produced by the breakdown of organic matter. It's essentially the ultimate form of sustainable recycling. It takes organic matter, like agricultural or municipal waste, breaks it down in an oxygen-free environment, and turns it into a highly effective renewable fuel. In our diorama here, this heavy industrial equipment is color-coded for clarity. The absolute heart of the plant, the main digester, is constructed as a sturdy green cylindrical tank capped off with a bright white domed roof. Notice the clever construction here too. A physical white pipe arcs over and connects that main digester tank directly to a smaller, secondary, dark green storage cylinder nearby. This handcrafted detail is a clever nod to the real-world industrial process, capturing the newly generated methane gas in the primary dome and safely transferring it through pipelines to a pressurized holding tank for later energy use. Finally, Section 6, Benefits of Clean Energy, a Sustainable Future. Having toured all 4 unique stations, let's zoom out from these individual components and synthesize the unified message presented by this entire model landscape.
So the crucial point is summarized beautifully down in the bottom left corner. Sitting right there on the lush green terrain is a dedicated benefits sign pad, featuring a hand-drawn globe that immediately reminds us of the global planetary scale this tabletop diorama actually represents.
Let's look at the exact points the creator mapped out on this miniature sign. These energy forms are all renewable sources, meaning they can be replenished. They are eco-friendly, and they reduce pollution, providing a pretty stark contrast to our traditional reliance on fossil fuels. Ultimately, integrating all of this leads to the final bullet point, a sustainable future. Those 4 simple lines collectively summarize the vital goal of the wind turbine, the solar house, the hydro dam, and the biogas plant we just explored. And that brings us to a final thought for today's explainer. We've taken a comprehensive tour of this fantastic diorama and seen exactly how wind, solar, hydro, and biogas can work together harmoniously to power a landscape. But what about your actual landscape? If you were to build a green energy grid for your own community today, which of these 4 sources would logically power your neighborhood? Consider your local geography, your weather. It's a great question to ask as we look toward building a cleaner future in our own backyards. Thank you so much for joining me on this tour.